So from handwritten visas to undocumented immigrants and hidden military camps, the Department of Home Affairs, together with the Border Management Authority, told Parliament's Portfolio Committee that they have their hands full as they try to shut down criminal syndicates operating in the country. Now, the two entities made some startling revelations regarding the arrests and deportations of the 95 Libyan nationals nabbed during a police raid in Mpumalanga. Officials have briefed MPs on the 90 undocumented Ethiopian nationals who were recently rescued in Johannesburg after they were held against their will. But let's get an update on yesterday's proceedings. And for that, we are joined this morning by Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, Dr. Masiapato. Dr. Masiapato, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think one of the standout things for me, certainly in your representations to Parliament yesterday, is the revelations around just the 97 Libyans that would have left the country once this discovery of the 95 Libyans in White River was found. I think just break down for us your understanding of the Libyan nationals, and I know that you've got this tally at the moment, of the movement of Libyan nationals in the country at the moment and how rapidly that changed with the discovery of the 95.
No, thank you very much, Naledi, and as the Border Management Authority, we appreciate the opportunity. Yes, indeed. When this whole issue of the discovery of the Libyans in Mpumalanga came to the fore, fairly to us, by the law enforcement authorities operating in the country, together with the intelligence community, we had to then do some study to really understand as to the movement of the Libyans into the country. So to that extent, we started by looking at their movement from the 1st of January until the 14th of August. So to that extent, we then realized that we fairly processed around 588 Libyans who entered the country for various reasons, but of course carrying different types of visas. And of course, those visas being issued by the Department of Home Affairs accordingly. So to that extent, we were able to also observe that around 463 of those had already left the country, as it were. And were then in a way to account for around 125, Libyans that had been in the country, as it were. And among the 125, obviously it was this group, the 95. So maybe just to also indicate, Nanedi, that the 95 had entered South Africa from April until around May, 21st April to the 29th of May, and they entered in batches of around 24 over time. And to that extent, they carried the passports, and of course, which were legitimate, and they carried the visas, which were legitimate at the time, and we actually had to verify those visas, and indeed, they were processed into the country. Yeah. So that is basically the work that we did, yeah.
You know, one of the things that we heard as well is that the Home Affairs Minister saying that this is a security, a matter of our very own security as a country. And now we're hearing that all ports of entry are now on a high alert for Libyans. I mean, this becomes quite a touchy subject, right? Where there's a sense that Border Management Authority will be zoning in on Libyan nationals. So maybe let's clarify what that means on a practical basis. So when a Libyan national does hit one of our border points, what does it mean when we say that now there is a high alert for Libyans?
So basically, on the basis of this particular incident and this particular occurrence, as it were, what it basically means is when the Libyans arrive at the port of entry, whether at Cape Town International, whether at OR Tambo or any other port of entry, land or even otherwise, there will be some enhanced due diligence in terms of the documentation they carry. One of the easiest things to verify, Naledi, is a passport, because it basically has to be machine readable on the basis of the International Civil Aviation Authority protocol. So it's a bit easier. What then becomes enhanced work that we need to be doing is the nature of the visa that they carry. So in this instance, as you will know, they carried a study visa, but of course, they got that visa in hindsight that we got from the Department of Home Affairs through false pretense, because when they entered the Republic, they went to do something else. But of course, on the basis of their entry, the visas were actually legitimate. And of course, we verified with the department and they were indeed legitimate. So the only thing that it means in this instance is that we will then do further due diligence work to make sure that indeed there is no any misrepresentation. Yeah,
but I mean, one of the things that we saw as well was an example of the visa application, right? The application for temporary residence. And what the Home Affairs Minister showed us was quite shocking. I mean, there's one here where the picture is not even in the box where it should be. The visa type is not selected in the application. There's a segment of that application that simply isn't completed. And so what happens in the process of all of this that then even with border management, you're able to, I suppose, be resourced enough to check even the quality of these applications? Where's the plugs that need to be filled?
Naledi, let me clarify the point. You will remember that the Border Management Authority is a frontline law enforcement authority that operates at the ports of entry, 71 of them, as you will know, and of course, even in the border law enforcement area. So in terms of the model that we have adopted as a country in as far as border management is concerned, what it means is the Department of Home Affairs is still the department that issues travel documents.
Right.
BMA does not enter into that. Home Affairs is the department that issues visas. So the responsibility of the BMA at the port of entry is the validation of the documentation and be able to process the people in and out. If the documents are not validated, I mean, for example, you will know that they have been stopping a number of Bangladeshis, number of Somalians at OR Tambo, just on the basis that they came with fraudulent visas. It's on the basis that we verify with the department, we pick up their fraudulent, then we actually arrest and deport. But once there is an affirmation that what is issued is right, then we process. So in this instance, Naledi, the issue that you are referring to is not an issue of the Border Management Authority, is the application process that is done by the department.
And that's a very fair point to make. And then, of course, I almost want to bring in the issue of Chidima Adechina, because and one of the things that the Home Affairs Minister talked about is the need for us to start, digitizing our systems, right? And so it speaks to just how much power the Border Management Authority then does have on who comes in and out of our country. And if there's sufficient synergy between yourselves and Home Affairs, so what's that looking like? What do you want to see from Home Affairs to ensure that we don't have this happen again?
You see, the main issue, Naledi, in this instance is the issue that the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Schreiber, actually emphasized yesterday, is the issue of automation. So once you have this process is being done, systematically and being done in a digitized context with very limited human intervention, it becomes a bit easier. Because in this instance, by the way, Naledi, when we talk about verification, we mean lateral manual verification, meaning we had to interface with the embassy, and we have to interface with the colleagues that had issued the documents. And on that basis, we get the authentication. But if it is system-based, then everything then is automated, and therefore there will then be a minimized reality of human intervention, and therefore issues of fraud will be easily dealt with.
Okay, well, talk to us about this now. The BMA having apprehended a man who was found with 34 passports and banknotes at the Lebombo port. That's the entry into Mozambique. Talk to us about that, what we know about that, and what's the steps moving forward.
No, thank you very much. You see, Naledi, this is some of the interventions that we have started doing at the port, but I can confirm that it is a mountain to climb, just on the basis of the impunity that people had been doing these things over the years. And on that basis, we have started intensifying operations. So in this instance, you will remember one of the key issues that we have started doing is that we have started deploying the border guards at the entry points of the ports of entry, as it were, so that we don't have people who actually enter the ports who are not travelers and who are not legitimate. So we actually seek to deal with this issue of the roving syndicates who entered the ports and end up corrupting the environment. So in this instance, we had this individual who arrived at the port, and at the point of search, at the gate level before they entered the port, we then discovered this 34 passports. And of course, the majority of those were owned, or they were Mozambican-based passports, and 2 of those were owned by the Angolans. So on that basis, there was also money involved, cash that the person actually carried. So as we speak now, the person had to be apprehended and therefore handed over to the police in Komati Port, and as we speak, that person is actually being processed. But what we understand this actually means is this bigger problem that we have, where people will then bring passports into the port with the view of stamping people in and out without their presence, with the view of increasing the number of days that they can actually reside in the Republic. This is something that we continue to deal with, Naledi, and we are intending to dismantle the entire syndicate.
Yeah, because 34 passports and banknotes, and then we're talking about, what, 71 ports. You removed one individual. Certainly there's a concern around once you remove him, more will be back to corrupt our border points, right? I mean, what's the long-term solution here?
You see, the long-term solution, Naledi, in this instance is again, digitization and automation. That is why, Naledi, we're moving away from what we used to call enhanced movement control system, which was just a system to process people. We are now rolling out a biometric movement control system where everybody's biometric becomes the center, meaning there is no any passport that will be processed without the owner and without their finger, for example. So that is the process that we are actually undertaking now, to the extent that we will not have any passport being stamped that is actually legitimizing any movement. We will need the fingerprint of the person in question and make sure that they are properly processed. But additional to that, Naledi, is the whole issue of the body cams that we spoke about, which we are in the process of procuring. Those will actually help us to make sure every activity taking place at the port level is on audio and also on visual. That on its own will enable us to be able to follow through on the activities that are taking place at the port so that we can start dealing with all of these fraudulent activities that has been the challenge for the Republic for many years.
Yeah, you know, Commissioner, we could talk for a very long time because there's so much to be said about what's taking place at our border points, and we hope that you'll make time to come back to us as well as we expand some of these discussions. But thank you so much for your time. That was the Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, Dr. Mike Masiapato.